right-brainers will rule the future. So it's time to ditch the dominance of left brain thinking and start tapping into the beauty and connectedness of the right brain. So the left brain has actually been the favored side, dating back to as far as Hippocrates, because the right brain is said to be responsible for logic, ration, analysis, and the right brain is said to be responsible for creativity and fun and connection. Okay, so we spoke about the industrial age earlier, right? And so back in the industrial age, machines replaced human backs. And with the advent of machines, well, we started to see a lot of poverty and people losing their jobs. Then fast forward to the information age, and now computers are starting to replace humans' left brains, yeah? So now what we have to look at is we're in the conceptual age. And in the conceptual age, we have to start adopting more fun, creativity, and meaning into our lives. So the dawn of the 20th century and the information age are behind us. And those logical and analytical types, they have to start being a lot less machine-like and a lot more human. Why? Well, because we saw those blue-collar workers in the industrial age, they started to lose their jobs to machines. And unfortunately, the white-collar workers, they're not far behind. So now we're in the conceptual age. And those left-brain thinkers, those businesses and professionals who live in that left side of their brain, unfortunately, they might lose their jobs to computers. So what can we do to be better, faster, and stronger? Because essentially, these days, efficiency is not going to cut it. So if we're a computer engineer, a software engineer, if we are an accountant or a lawyer, unfortunately, we might not have a job in the next 5 to 10 years. That's heavy, I know. So there's 3 forces that are essentially tipping the scales towards this idea of right brain thinking. And the first one is abundance. And Dan touched on this a little bit earlier. We have so much stuff. We're inundated with material things. So there's millions of us who are actually searching for more purpose and more meaning. Second is Asia. So there's so many routine white-collar jobs at the moment that are being shifted overseas. So a computer programmer, for instance, might make about $70K in Australia, but only make about $15 in India. And actually in India, $15,000 is a lot. Next is automation, again, what we spoke about earlier. So millions of people are going to be losing their jobs essentially to this idea of efficiency. So unfortunately, millions of people are potentially going to lose their jobs in the next 5 to 10 years. So it's more important now than ever that we inject more empathy, play, and meaning into what we do. So we have to ask ourselves these 3 questions as professionals in case we might actually be the ones who are going to lose our jobs in 5 to 10 years to these 3 A's. So the first is, can someone overseas do what I do cheaper? Or can a computer do what we do faster? And lastly, is what I provide actually necessary in this age of abundance? We really need to start satisfying our emotional and spiritual needs. And in order to have great success in this idea of the conceptual age, again, we need to inject these 3 things into our workplace, which are empathy, play, and meaning. And we need to figure out how we can do things so our jobs are not going to be shipped overseas or taken over by a computer. So the first, like I said, is empathy. Empathy is obviously our way to step outside of ourselves and be in someone else's shoes. Why do we go to the hairdresser? Is it because when they go in, they get our hair cut, they do it in 5 minutes and they kick us out the door? No, we go to our hairdresser because they double as our therapist. We talk to them about how our day is going, maybe the hot guy we met on Tinder, and they're empathetic and they're understanding and we have a laugh with them. And that's why we go to the same hairdresser over and over. And hopefully they give us a good haircut. Also, when we go to a doctor, we want to make sure that our doctor is empathetic, because the last thing we want to do is go into the doctor, start telling them what's happening for us, and they cut us off after 23 seconds. Which, believe it or not, 23 seconds is actually the average of what it takes, the time for a doctor to say, that's enough. So they throw a diagnosis in your face, they throw some pills in your face, and they say, see you later. It doesn't make us feel good when that happens, when we see a doctor like that, does it? I'm obviously a doctor, and probably one of those most empathetic doctors that we know is Patch Adams. Some of you might have seen Robin Williams' film Patch Adams, but essentially Patch Adams is a real person. He's a physician and a comedian, and he travels around the world bringing laughter and medical attention to the developed world. And he's also the inspiration for my costume. So some of you might recall the Anthrax breakout that happened years ago in the US. And for those of you that don't know, I am American, this is a real accent. I'm not putting it on for the Patch Adams gig. So this massive anthrax breakout, and again, the US is not a very safe place to live. That's why I've sought refuge here. So thank you for having me. I am a permanent resident, yes. So there was this massive anthrax breakout years ago, and for some of you that don't know, people were actually putting poison in the post. Who knows what their motives were, but let's not talk about it. So essentially there were these 2 postal workers that were showing symptoms of anthrax, and they went to 2 separate doctors nearby. The first gentleman saw a doctor who was a male, and he started telling him his story. 23 seconds later, the doctor said, that's enough, you're all right, here's some Panadol, have a nice day. Unfortunately, 3 days later, that man died because the doctor didn't listen to him and the doctor was not empathetic. The other postal worker went to a female doctor, and guess what? She listened. Funny that. That's a few women laughing in the audience. A few men are like, whatever. So this female doctor listened to his whole story, ended up figuring out that, ran some tests, and he actually was infected by anthrax, and the man lived. So essentially, we want to work with people who have more empathy. So what is empathy again, and how can we actually be more empathetic in this conceptual age? Well, first and foremost, we want to listen to everyone's story. We don't want to cut them off after 23 seconds. We want to make eye contact. We want to listen to them. We don't want to be plotting what we're going to say next. And also, we want to sometimes just put our viewpoints aside. We don't always have to be right. And lastly, validating that person by telling them, I know how you feel. There's no better way to show empathy, but then obviously relating to that person. Next on the list is play. Oh, I love it. I love play. But unfortunately, like Dan said, play is something that we kind of lose as we grow older. It gets kind of beat out of us as we have that linear education like James spoke about. And we have to actually really start to break through these socialized norms and ideas around play, about being childish or frivolous or ridiculous, like Michael was talking about with Lego. Essentially, there's so much scientific research behind the benefits of play. Not only is it fun, but it also helps us adapt to change. It gives us a sense of purpose and mastery. It builds our focus and our ability to learn, and so many more things. It also obviously builds empathy, like we spoke about earlier. So we need to play at work. We can't have this dualism between work and play anymore, because really, I believe that the way we're working, it's just not working. Australian businesses, they spend $10 billion a year on stress-related mental health compensation. And it's said that about 76% of Australians are somewhat disengaged in their roles. People who thrive in unplanned, unexpected situations, who thrive in fast-paced environments, they're the ones that are going to be kicking ass in the conceptual age. And so what is this called when we can adapt to change and the unplanned and the unexpected? Well, that's just improvisation. And I'm sure plenty of you have sat at an improv show or watched Whose Line Is It Anyway and had a great laugh at the people standing up on stage. But just like play, improvisation is a fantastic way to be better in business. It helps us think on our feet. It helps us stay motivated and be in the moment. It also helps us collaborate, say yes, and also accept failure, which some of us actually are not very good at. When we speak to executives and business owners and managers, they actually say that about 75% of their day is improvised. So again, with these linear educations, why don't we learn improvisation when we get an MBA? So how can we be more playful? Obviously, we're talking about it up here. It's all fun and games, but actually, how can we implement more play into the workplace? The first thing I think we can do is permission. Permission to be silly. permission to be ridiculous, and actually permission to step outside of the status quo and bring your whole self to work. Because it's really hard to go to work every day and not be ourselves. So I'm gonna give you guys permission right now to be silly. We're gonna do something called laughter yoga. Some of you might have done this before, some of you might have not, but I'd like to ask you, when is the last time you did something for the first time? So you're going to begrudgingly repeat after me. Ha ha ha. Ho ho ho. Hee hee hee. One more time. Ha ha ha. Ho ho ho. Hee hee hee. And one more time for good measure. Ha ha ha. Ho ho ho. Hee hee hee. All right, that was all right. That's pretty average. It's still early, that's fine. So obviously we just felt ridiculous, we felt silly, we kind of stepped outside of our comfort zone. But again, the more we can adopt this idea of permission to show up at work, the more successful we're gonna be. The second way to play at work is to change your perception. So this whole outdated idea of play is frivolous and it's ridiculous and it's a distraction, I'm sure Michael will contest that play is productive, it's engaging, and it's useful. So go back to your boss, go back to the office and say, damn it, we're gonna play. That's your homework. And also, we need to stop judging ourselves and others. So the people who actually want to show up and who want to be silly and push the boundaries at work, let's not judge them. Because really, we're probably just jealous that we can't do it. So maybe we should ask them for help and how to be a bit more silly and step outside of our comfort zones. So the last and final way to be more playful is to have a few less screen moments during your day. So really disconnecting to reconnect. I'm sure some of you go for walks during your lunch break, do a bit of mindfulness or meditation. More of that. More opportunities to connect with your employees and building a workplace that feels safe, where you can show up and you can be silly because you know the people around you that are not going to judge you. Our last way to kick ass in the conceptual age is with meaning. So meaning is our ability to really connect to something that is greater than us, something that is bigger, to connect to our spirituality. And when you think about it, let's look at yoga and mindfulness and meditation. People in the West have adopted that over the last 20 years, and it's in the millions and millions of people. How many of you do yoga or meditate or do mindfulness? Raise your hand. Quite a few people. For those of you that don't, let's do it. Let's jump on the bandwagon. And also when you look at psychologists, life coaches, sex therapists, relationship coaches, these are all right brain directed thinkers. And the reason why they're succeeding in this day and age is because we all want to break the chains that bind us. We all want more out of life. So a whole new mind brings on a whole new opportunity. Oh yeah, that's a good one. What is the meaning of life? I'm not sure, the computers are down. So again, a whole new mind creates a whole new opportunity of work when we inject this idea of empathy, play, and meaning into the mix. And so this is the way that we're going to be able to be better, faster, and stronger than computers. Because again, we're searching for more, but not of what is efficient or useful or practical, but what injects purpose and mastery into our lives. So I want to ask you one question before we go today. Are you in your right mind?